Questions? So this is a very, very important slide. This is probably one of the most important slides today, but you're going to see it again and again and again. So now that we've talked about this shared responsibility model, let me jump in and explain each one of these models, what they do, okay? So for instance, let's start with, where's my mouse? Oh, there it is. Let's start with infrastructure as a service, okay? Why do we need to use infrastructure as a service? As you can see at the bottom here, oops, why did I click on that? I should not have clicked. As you can see at the bottom, you are essentially renting the hardware in the cloud data center. So you're just renting the hardware. You don't get to buy hardware. You don't get to do any of that. You just rent their hardware, and then you decide whatever you want to do with it, whatever program you want to add, whatever operating system, you decide what operating system you want. If you decide that you want to use Windows, fine, you set up Windows. If you want to use Linux, you set up Linux. Only the hardware is provided by the cloud provider. So looking at the top left, you see that with this model, you have the most flexibility and you have the maximum control. Okay? The cloud provider is only responsible for maintaining that hardware. They'll make sure the hardware is new. They'll make sure that it's up to date and so on. They make sure that the internet is always connected to your hardware. That's their own job. And they make sure that it's secure. Otherwise, if you don't want that, then you're using on-premises. With on-premises, if you go and decide that you're renting a place in Douala to set up your servers, that's fine. You go to sleep at night and wake up, they have stolen it. That's your problem. Your whole system is down. You have to start dealing with it again. But now with cloud providers, that headache is not yours. Your server is never going to be down because they are in charge of security. They are in charge of maintenance. They are in charge of internet. If you decide that you want to go and live in Yaoundé at maybe near the what do you call it, Hopital Central, because the light never gets disconnected, the day that there will be no light, your system and all your servers will be down. But you're not going to have that problem when you're using cloud providers. We'll talk about those again in future. Does that make sense? Everybody good with that, I assume? So again, that is for infrastructure as a service.
Hello?
They provide you the hardware. Everything else is you. Next up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to be so clear. So with infrastructure as a service, based on this schema that you just have here, so the first three, and I call it sky blue,
yeah,
from the bottom,
yes,
are provided by the provider. They are not under your control.
Yes.
So the ones that are under your control are the ones that are the navy blue, you know, the ones at the top after the first three, which are the responsibility that are transferred by the cloud provider, and then the other ones are the ones that you are bringing in, right?
Exactly. So as you see at the bottom here, Microsoft, which is the one we are focusing on, Microsoft is the cloud provider.
Okay.
They are the ones in charge of everything at the bottom, except in on-premises, which is the traditional way that you do it. Okay. Otherwise, if you see navy blue or deep blue, then customer is you. You are in charge of that response. It's your responsibility, as we've talked about in the shared responsibility matrix. But in some cases, there's shared responsibility. You guys can split the responsibility. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But is there any circumstance where people still go with on premises, like people are able to carry on the entire on-premises application by themselves, that's providing everything?
Yes, there are many cases people do that, but it's also depending on what you're trying to do. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the benefits of cloud computing. So we'll look at the reasons why you don't want to be on premises, you want to be on the cloud. For some reasons, let's say for instance, if it's a medical institution, they are not sure about the security of the cloud providers. They want all their information to be located only in the hospital. Then they are going to probably want to do on premises. If it's sensitive information and they are not sure that, you know, if they're being regulated and they cannot prove that the regulations are being met, then they'll probably do on premises. But for any other thing, I don't think it should be a major thing. Depending on your budget too. If it's a military probably has enough money to be able to build all their stuff in-house. But we're also going to talk about public, private, and hybrid clouds, which you should be able to make sense of that to see if it's better for you to have a private cloud versus on-premises. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Awesome. Very good observation. So infrastructure as a service, again, let's think about a house. If you decide you want to build your house, and all you want is you want the guys to provide the cement, the sand, the planks, the zinc, they'll just give you all that infrastructure, all this hardware, and come and drop it with you. And then it's up to you now to take it and start building from there. You start setting up your operating system and then building the network controls, adding the applications that need to be added, and so on and so forth before you can give people access. So that's what infrastructure as a service is. That structure is there. The hardware is provided for you. Everything else is on you. All right. So next up, platform as a service. Platform, again, think of, you know, you have taken all those planks and then you have built your platform now. The platform as a service is the middle ground. There you get to split the responsibilities. Okay. Your own responsibility would be, or what should I say, the cloud provider's responsibility, just like we said before, is having all those physical things that they had earlier. But now they are also providing you an operating system. They give you operating system and then they give you development tools. Development tools could be things like databases and development environment. So at the end of the day, it's very useful when you want to complete a development environment without having that headache of making sure you're maintaining it, it's updated, all the patches are there. They take care of the operating system. If there's an operating system update, they do it for you. You don't have to worry about doing that. You don't have to pay somebody to do it. Okay. If you want to create a new operating system, you just click a button, they create a new one for you. You don't have to pay somebody to do all of that. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Everybody's still on mute. So again, the only difference now is depending on your responsibilities. Do you want to set up the network configuration, or do you want them to do it? Do you want to be in charge of the applications, or do you want them to do it? That's why you see there is shared responsibility with all of these identity and directory infrastructure. Okay. And finally, let's talk about software as a service. Software as a service, if you look at a product, or you look at it from a product perspective, then it is the most complete, because you're only responsible for the data. You're only responsible for the access. You're only responsible for the identity and the accounts, as is shown at the top here. Everything else is the cloud provider's responsibility. So it gives the most responsibility to your cloud provider, and you have the least responsibility. Okay. So that is the final cloud model that we can discuss. But it's good that we have an idea when we can use either of these. What scenarios? So starting with software as a service, which is at the top, you can use it for emails, like Gmail. You don't save your Gmail. Your Gmail is saved somewhere else. You're just using the internet to get access to your Gmail. That's why you can check your email on your phone, on anybody's phone, on your computer, on your laptop. It's still the same email you're looking at. You know, for customer relationship management, if it's a hotel, they want to check out their customers, all that stuff, you need only the software. For collaboration, is it for email or for Google Suite, as you can see at the very top here? Microsoft Office, collaboration, Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, all of those are software as a service. It's provided on the internet. Salesforce is also one of them. Google Suite, all the Google platform stuff that we use, it's based on software as a service. So what is the model? Software as a service, you're just consuming it. So you're consuming the cloud. But platform as a service, you are building on the cloud. Okay, they provide you a web or a streaming platform, just like Netflix, or a web platform to build your website, or an application development platform to build your application. Decision support as well, if you want to look at decision making, business analysis, and so on. Those are all things that you use for platform as a service so that you can build on top of it. But with infrastructure as a service, that's when you're thinking of migration. Okay, so you want to move your things from on-premises and migrate it to the cloud based on the benefits that we'll talk about tomorrow. So that's when you see all of those. At the end of the day, the scenarios you want to think about for infrastructure as a service, which we just talked about, if you want to lift and shift, for instance, you have everything working in on-premises, but you decide you want to go to the cloud. So you go to the cloud, you build everything that needs to be built on there, or you request what needs to be requested, you lift your on-premises stuff and shift it to the cloud. That's how you just migrate it. Now everything's on the cloud, and then you can shut down your on-premise, or you can keep it for backup. Okay.
Yeah, because let me ask this question I want to ask, like between the two blocks, let's say the platform as a service and software as a service. I know one of them is like a consumer, which is a software as a service.
Yes.
Okay, let's say me accessing my email also, right?
Yes.
Okay. What is the case? Like I have my laptop, so I basically bought that hardware, right?
Yes.
The laptop or my CPU at home, and then I'm accessing the internet versus me going to a cyber cafe, which I'll just go and then maybe pay some money just to access the internet. You know what I mean? I just have to check my email at that cyber cafe. What do you differentiate between that, which I bought the laptop, does I have my laptop or my CPU, and then I still access my internet at the convenience, comfort of my home, versus went to the public place to just access my internet, my email there?
Okay, very, very good question. So at the end of the day, there are two kinds of computers, right? You have the client and the server. Okay, the concept here is that the server is there just to store all the information. All of that server, you can decide to have your own server. You buy a big computer that has more memory, more space, and more compute power to be able to save it in your closet or your basement or in a particular part in your office. That will be your server. But that server has to always be connected to the internet at all times. You don't have to lose power. You don't have to have any downside moments. That's the server. When you're connecting to your email, you're connecting to either Google server if it's Gmail, or Microsoft server if it's Outlook, or you're connecting to Yahoo server if it's Yahoo. They have a server. They have a dedicated computer that's just for everybody's email in this world. Okay, so that's that part. Now the client is you that is requesting a particular thing. The client could be your laptop. The client could be your cell phone. The client could even be an application, another software that's requesting that information. The client could also be that computer at the cyber cafe. So at the end of the day, it's up to you based on your convenience, how you want to access that server. So that server that we're talking about is the infrastructure. The infrastructure in this case is not the client. There are many, many clients out there. The client is your cell phone, your laptop, and so on. All of us are trying to access that data or that storage or whatever is being saved for us on the server. If you go to the website, the website has pictures, videos, all of those are stored on the server. So go ahead.
So you mean the hardware is the hardware being part of the infrastructure, or it can also be classified as being part of the software as a service?
Or the hardware is definitely the infrastructure. So
I know the hardware is the infrastructure. How do I consider my CPU at home? Is it hardware or is not a hardware?
Okay, so let me go ahead and paint this picture again, right? So you have, let me clean this up. You have this computer, which does not usually have a screen. That's called a server, okay? It's a big computer that is saving all your pictures, your emails, all that stuff, okay? That server is located somewhere which we do not have access to it. In addition to that, you also have your own computer, if I can draw correctly. That's your laptop with a keyboard. This is always requesting information from the server. The server is always giving it back. The hardware here is separate from the hardware there. Even your cell phone also is requesting all the information from the server, and the server is giving it back the information that is requested. Now, this server, the server side is what we are talking about, infrastructure as a service. This is your personal infrastructure. This is the cloud. So your computer is not part of the cloud. It is your personal device, but the cloud, again, is for that company. Those big companies, be it your own personal company that you want to create, do you want all this hardware to be saved in a basement or in a storage room, or do you want it to be saved in a data center that's owned by Amazon, Google, or Microsoft? Does that make sense?
Okay, makes sense. So it basically means that, okay, we might have some CPU. Of course, those are still, even though we're kind of like, I'm trying to imagine it as being a hardware, but technically it's part of the client, the consumer's enhancement tool that helps them to access the server.
Exactly. So this is all the client stuff. The client has all this stuff. It has a computer, it has a cyber cafe, it has a cell phone, even your TV. Your TV is also using Netflix, or it's also using all those other apps. It's accessing it from the server. Okay. But the server now is the one that's providing you the service. The client is just giving you access to that service. Okay. Just like your browser is giving you access to the website. So when you look at it that way, then you can say, okay, I'm going to be using, do I need to get this infrastructure? This is all where the hardware is. And this is also where the hardware is, but this is the client side and that's the server side. The server provides services. So you come to a restaurant, all the food is being served in the kitchen. They're going to take the food and chop it off, cook it, and provide it to you. Obviously, you're coming with your hands, your feet, your mouth to eat as well. But they also have hands that they use in the kitchen to make the food. But you also need your own hands to be able to eat the food. So that's how you have the server that has its own hardware that is in the cloud, and you also have your own hardware that makes up your client.
Makes sense. Okay.
Awesome. Very, very good question. So let's go back to where we.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, go for it, Mr. Igwe.
Yes. Anyway, it's just part of what you're talking about, but this is something I was reading a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's out of this. Anyway, I came across this word, X as X-ray, X as a service, XaaS.
Yeah.
As a service. So from what I was reading, it says that's anything as a service.
Yes.
I mean that you don't provide nothing. The cloud provides everything for you.
Very, very good question. To explain the meaning of this question, it's actually a good time for you to ask it. So there are many things that can be provided for you on the cloud. Normally, like I pointed out, right? You have that big machine that has a bunch of storage and so on. That's a server. You can have multiple types of servers. Okay. Based on what the server is giving you, you can have a server that's saving all your information to create a website. That will be called a web server. You can have a server that's going to just make sure that everything that you're having is being blocked or not. That would be a firewall server. You can also have one that's just for storing all your information. That would be a storage server. They are all different, many types of servers. Okay. And again, like I said, remember in IT, all these words are important. Server provides service. A web server provides a web service, and so on and so forth. So all of these are services. XaaS means anything as a service. What do you want as a service? If we look at this on the right, do we want software as a service? Or do we want, in this case, it's function as a service? Or do we want database or data as a service? Or do we want platform as a service? Or do we want storage as a service? Or do we want just the bare bones infrastructure, hardware as a service? Does that make sense?
Yes. And then there's another one that I read. That was what actually threw me off. Container as a service. So actually, what does container really define?
Very good question. We will definitely get to container in a little bit, but just like I explained earlier, right? You have your computer. Your computer has hardware and software. You have decided that with this, your hardware, which has your CPU, like I pointed out earlier, your disk, and so on, you create a virtual machine. All of this hardware is being used by your operating system, right? To run what you have on your machine, but you can create virtual machines. Right. Instead of creating virtual machines, each virtual machine, let's say you create a virtual machine in here, this virtual machine will have its own operating system and will have one application, another application, XYZ. And you can create another virtual machine, which is on operating system that has application or software A, software B, software C. A container is separate because in this case, you have to create virtual machines separately. A container creates a container environment, and then you can just have multiple containers on top. Each container has just the services that it's provided. So now you're having that container as a service, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but let's not get into that right now. It's just going a step further from virtual machines to get to a container. So think about the container that you want to send to Cameroon. You can have everything in there. You just put whatever you want, bundle it up, and send it, instead of having only the particular things that you want. Does that help? Does that make any sense?
Just a little bit.
Yeah. But we'll talk about it clearly. Normally it was always one machine does one thing. One machine, one operating system. Right. But now with virtual machines, you have a virtual machine and you create multiple virtual, or you have one machine and multiple virtual machines with operating system. But with the case of this, you have just one operating system and a bunch of containers on top, and you still have your hardware at the bottom. So let's not talk too much about that. I don't want us to get too confused with that, but that's what we're talking about in this case. Sounds good?
Okay.
Awesome. Very good question so far. I'm glad that everybody is digging, because each time you ask a question, it's definitely helping others to understand one thing or another. But yeah, we'll talk about it more. But a few things I want you to remember today: lift and shift migration, testing and development. In that case, you want to use infrastructure as a service, because you can just request them to give you hardware. You go ahead and test your stuff, because that's the kind of hardware you have. You test the application, it works fine. Boom, now you can deploy it, everything is fine. With platform as a service, maybe you want to create a whole development framework and you want to use it for, I think this is one, I have to update that, for platform as a service. But software as a service, again, using it for stuff like email and messaging, business productivity applications that we pointed out here, CRM, finance and expense tracking, ERP, right? So platform as a service, you want to use it for streaming, as a web server, decision support, application development, or development framework, as pointed out. So we talked about this briefly. Infrastructure as a service, Amazon Web Service has EC2, Google has a Google Compute Engine. They just provide you with the hardware. Again, what is a computer? A computer is just dumb, but very fast. It's very fast because of the CPU. So what they're providing you is just the CPU and whatever other hardware, and they keep updating it. Storage as a service is not something that we need for this exam, but it's good to know some of those things that are being stored. Amazon has S3. You have iCloud for Apple. You also have Google Cloud Storage. You have Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive. All of those are storage as a service. The platform as a service, we have Microsoft Azure, Salesforce platform, App Engine, AWS, and so on. And software as a service, we have all these different software that we use in Office or in Google Suite, Salesforce as well. All right. So at this point, I was supposed to take a quick break. But welcome back. We have done a lot. We've made considerable progress today. I'm really glad, because I actually added the content. We're supposed to do just a little bit, but I felt like if I did not explain to you what software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service were, then it was going to be difficult for you to understand. So I added that to today's lecture. That is actually what we're supposed to do on day number 3 on Monday. So I'll encourage you to go through it again, come with questions, so that on Monday we can still go over it, and then it will solidify everything that you already know. So that on Monday we can get into the core architecture of Azure services. But tomorrow we'll talk about benefits. But before we talk about benefits, we need to also talk about the cloud models. Okay. So what questions do you have before I continue to that?